All right. Oh, hey, these mics are on. We're ready to go. This is happening.
Hello.
All right. So we were lucky enough to have 3 of the board members from the foundation and myself, who works for the foundation. So we decided to do like just a little panel and give everybody a chance to kind of ask questions and stuff like that. So I'll start it off with a couple questions, but they're going to be really soft. Like when you work for the foundation, the board's basically your boss. So just imagine somebody interviewing 3 of their bosses, and then that's what this is going to be.
I joined the finance community.
yeah. But yeah, so why don't we start off just a little bit with what sort of got you interested in Node.js, and then why you decided to participate in the foundation as a way to invest. Start with Denise and then move along.
Well, you came and found me at Foo Camp. And did I already work for PayPal? I don't think I did. I had just started. Okay. And you said, help. And so then I started looking at it, and it looked like a pretty worthy community, and PayPal was happy to have me help, and I was in a position to do it. So that's how I got here.
I think the thing that got me was some of my customers actually, pointing out that, Node was going on. It was really interesting to them. And then I found that actually folks across IBM were also engaged, and they wanted, to actively use Node to place it into the other architectures that we go and generate and support. And we're already doing that, and had been working with V8, actually making changes and contributing to V8 engine as well too. And they said, hey, Todd, please, go find out what's going on there. And so I found a great community. People who were trying to work together and work that was really interesting, and just clicked. I thought it was something worthwhile to go put time into and just participate in. Because the last year hasn't exactly been the easiest thing to get the foundation going. So.
Hi. So unlike these two, I haven't stood up in front of everybody yet. So hi, I'm Brian. I'm from Groupon. We got involved in the foundation when, we have obviously a very big investment in Node. It's our entire front end, as Clovis talked about earlier. And there was some concern for a while that things weren't going so smoothly with the fork, and community seeming to not be as happy as it has become again. And so when the foundation came into being, and it looked like everything was going to try to reunite, that was very, very interesting to us. And we didn't actually know we could help out very easily with that until one of the other proto board members was like, hey, you should get involved with this because we need more actual users rather than vendors involved in that. And so we joined the foundation, and I am greatly excited to try and help build a happy, healed community here. It's an exciting thing.
All right. Well, speaking of users, I think all these people use Node. I'll venture a guess. What's the foundation really going to do for the user community now that the foundation is up and running and backing everything?
I'd say give them a voice is one of the main things, right? One of the formulas for success is bringing your users in and having them have a voice, having them participate with the board, having them, tell us what needs to be done and put their input and ideas into there, because they're the folks who are really using it. And the developer will often get really detached from that, and it's that reality check, bringing people back in. I think that really helps.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for developers that are focusing on building a technology to also process the user feedback, because there's so much of it in a successful project, and it gets easy. The loudest voice wins. There's lots of things that are wrong with that, and so trying to help get a more authentic read on what's actually needed as a service to the technical committee is something that we're really interested in doing.
I don't have an awful lot to add to that because I agree with the priorities. I'll say the other thing, though, for the users, one of the biggest things we can do is to get out of the way of the technical community.
Totally.
The board out of the way, not the users out of the way.
Well, it's designed to be that, right? We're not in the way, luckily, right? Don't want to be either. Right?
That's why I said as a service.
Yeah, as a service. Yeah. All right, so I think we can take some questions from other people. Anybody have some questions about the foundation? And anything like that.
You knew there would be homework, right?
Yeah, yeah. Come on. Yeah, Emily.
You could ask harder ones than Michael if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know exactly how long this went on because I just got here. So if you already covered this, I apologize. But I was curious if anyone has insight as to like, what do you think are the biggest takeaways from the whole schism with Node and IO, and like maybe this is just an age-old story that everyone goes through, but maybe is there anything unique to this situation that you think we should keep in mind in the future?
Get the hell out of the way is what comes to mind. Successful open source projects that are moving well, but for a roadblock, the best thing you can do is get the roadblock out of the way. And the community making the decision to say, no, really, we can't live like this anymore was super helpful for those of us that wanted that roadblock to move. So the level of transparency that was expressed in the work that the IOJS community did to describe how they want to work together, which a lot of it was him, I know, but you guys all helped with that. That's super helpful for us to come back and reinforce, really transparency is what this community feeds on. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question.
And lots of communities get to this, right? And this pressure builds up as it becomes more successful and people see their contributions going in. If they don't feel like they have that voice, that they can't help set the direction, it boils over. And we've seen it sort of time and time again. And sometimes it gets to a fork and it's irreversible, and sometimes the fork can be brought together. Luckily, we had people who really wanted to work together, and made it work. And Michael, his help, and the Linux Foundation's help, and everybody who got engaged here, and Denise as well, and myself, and just make it work.
It takes a village,
Well, and also, it's one thing to say, hey, we want to change this project. We have opinions. And it's another one to say, well, actually, we've implemented this here. It works. Like, this is why. Here's the data. You can see it working. Like, let's merge this back together. And it was good that it didn't go on so long or get so kind of
separate.
Yeah, separate, that it couldn't come back together. I think in a way to start over and to have a clean slate, it's a lot easier to do a lot of things and to build new competencies when you have a clean slate like that. And I kind of worry about other communities that I look at where they have these deficiencies, and they've even had people start over and create a project that really fixes it, but I don't see the path for them coming back together. Like in Python, concurrency and performance are kind of like not great. But there's this PyPy interpreter that's they started over with a clean slate. They did a great job. It's super fast. I don't see a path for that coming in to like at Python proper and being the Python implementation, even though then they would have like all of these great competencies together. So I'm glad that we got to merge.
Best lesson is never let it get to a fork. Always try to work it out.
I'm actually going to always try to, I'm going to disagree with that just a little bit. If something is truly irreconcilable, forking can be great. It is because of irreconcilable goals that we have both OpenBSD and NetBSD. And I'm glad for that. And sometimes the community will survive and flourish with that. And other times the goals turn out not to be irreconcilable. It's just sort of procedural and interaction style differences, and that should not be allowed to come to a fork.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, and the whole time we said we're leaving the door open to merge back together. We're not doing anything that's going to make this impossible, right? That was a conscious decision.
Right. So the question I have, I'm just interested. So each one of you is employed with a company apart from being part from foundation, right? So does that mean that you represent the interest of that particular company within the foundation, or you speak on behalf of yourself? Like, how does it work?
Well, so I personally represent myself everywhere I go. That's what open source is. However, I will say, and I know Todd shares this concern, some of the foundations that we see that are pay-to-play foundations where you get a board seat because you paid money, which this is one right now that way, I see that as very problematic because individuals who are working to make something happen can suddenly disappear if their employment changes, right? So I think one of the things that we've been talking about, kicking around the playground here this week, is what steps it will take to mitigate that ephemeral nature of the board. There will still be somebody from PayPal on the board forever, as long as they're paying their dues, but there's no promise that it's going to be the person that you're seeing today, and that's problematic, I think. And that's not a feature that we baked into this. That's how the Linux Foundation sets up their foundations. But we have the opportunity as a board to change those rules a little bit, to try to make it a little bit less likely that that's going to happen.
Yeah, just like a quick kind of so that people understand. The Node.js Foundation is an independent entity. Like it's filed on its own. It has its own board. That board can change its policies. The Linux Foundation is there to provide services, and that independent foundation pays the Linux Foundation for those services. So if something wants to change and the board feels like it should change, then they have the opportunity to do that. Also, so the way that it works out is that there's levels of you put in money at different levels, and there's like a sliding scale for some of the lower levels. The lower levels elect a member per membership. So actually, Brian doesn't. Yeah, so Brian doesn't just represent Groupon. He actually represents like 10 other companies that are in the server class.
Brian.
Yeah, but really he represents Brian. But yeah.
So it's a little, the reason that it's set up this way is that it's hard in the US right now to create a nonprofit around an open source project. The IRS has cottoned on to the fact that there might be value in open source software, and they're worried about just blanket nonprofits. We could start a church and we'd be fine. But
so we've actually had a really good ruling just recently, though. The OpenStack Foundation is now a nonprofit status.
yeah, finally.
So that will help all of us, I think.
But one of the
across all
shortcuts
Which license is that? Is that
501c6.
C6.
Yeah, see, one of the shortcuts that you can take is there are these foundations that have achieved that status. They're kind of like umbrellas, and then you can come under their umbrella. And the Linux Foundation, for a variety of reasons, is the one that we chose for Node. And now that we have our little foundation, this board will be working to make it perfect for this. The first step was get a foundation, and now we have tune it for this community, and that's kind of where we're at.
We have to do the legal work to then get our nonprofit status and those things, and it'll be a little easier now to do that, luckily. We're starting to see the tide turn a little bit with the IRS. So.
Yeah. Do we have a
Actually, yeah. Where's the mic running around? Oh, there we go. Oh, Trevor's got it.
Okay.
Go, Trevor.
Ask a question.
With this in mind, can you clarify the exact line with how much the board can steer the technical committee? I think that will appease any
Not at all.
concerns. Exactly.
The answer is not at all.
Okay.
What we can do is help you if you ask for help. And you might ask for help if you get into policy stuff where you want help. But technical choices, technical decisions, not so much. We set it up very explicitly to leave the technical committees to do that work.
Yeah, the only time that the technical community needs to ask the board for anything is if you want to spend money. That's really it. And then the board goes, here's this amount of money that can be doled out this way. And for tax purposes, you have to be very specific about that. But then I think Suits was up. But can we?
Yeah, now where's the mic?
Yeah.
And then you're going to go back again because.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm going to have trouble asking this question a little bit, so I'll need your help because I'm not very good at the American stuff with boards and committees and things like that. But I could probably find out this on the website or something like this. But how many people are on the committee and the board that haven't sort of? There's no corporation or money behind that particular person, and it's either just like a passion thing, or they're almost seen more of everybody's an individual, whether they come represented with a company or not. But how many people are actually just completely individual, and that there hasn't been that kind of financial influence?
That's an excellent question. So, and you asked it beautifully.
Thank you.
You want it, Brian? Are you getting ready to say something?
So on the board, everybody is representing a corporate member of the foundation right now.
No, not Rod.
No,
Oh, sorry,
true.
you're right. Not everyone. There's Rod.
Yeah, Rod Vega is the representative of the TSC, which is the technical community elected him.
However,
yes.
before we incorporated, I was very careful to make sure that we added a provision for elected members from the community. And we will be holding elections. We haven't sorted out when or how many, but the language is in the bylaws that we adopted to allow that, because I personally couldn't serve on a board that didn't have representation from its own community.
Same here.
Yeah, that's exactly where it was going.
And those are the kinds of changes we're talking about when we say there's things we have to tweak.
So the way that that's going to work is right now we're figuring out the registration system, but essentially you're going to be able to register as an individual member of the foundation, and it's like a $100 a year due if you're not a contributor. So if you're not in the GitHub org, basically, if you're a member of the GitHub org, which like 370 people are, it'll be free. And as we're talking about becoming an umbrella and bringing other projects, we'll include those projects as well, and all of the people that contribute to that. And it's contributing in any way, if you're doing localizations or working on the website, it's not just if you're a core contributor. So, got to go back. Got to go way in the back now.
So a question about technical teams. Now that IOJS has gone, how can people get into working and contributing, not just core, but anything? At IOJS, it was fairly easy to a degree. How has the foundation changed that?
Well, we literally renamed IOJS to Node, right? Like the GitHub org was called IOJS, and we renamed it to Node.js. And so all of those working groups and all of those contribution policies that made it easy, remain. And there's actually more working groups now that are more specific than ever. We've worked on trying to create it. We had to redo the entire website, and it's even easier to get involved in the website now. So that is all the same. It's actually the main problem right now is just discovery. There's so many working groups that it's kind of hard to figure out which one you should get involved in.
Yeah, that would actually be a good session at the next conferences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it should also be a web page, maybe, that's on
Fair
the
enough.
website.
But, I learned a lot more about core than I would have otherwise done. Right.
Oh, yeah.
There
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So, yes, there's a workshop this afternoon. If you want to get involved in contributing to core, we have some core contributors here, and they know some areas. And the thing about certain aspects of core is that, they're never going to be super well documented, and they're kind of constantly changing and evolving. So it's really like you need some kind of one-on-one time with somebody to dive into it. And so we have some core contributors here, and if you're interested in getting involved in core, please come to that session, and we'll hook you up.
And then if you need questions and support afterwards, the IRC channels are open, and those guys always will answer your questions, and they're really polite about it. They're nice.
Yeah. We're very good about reviewing things on GitHub as well. So when the PRs come in, but it's getting to the point where there is a PR that can be kind of difficult. So Trevor and James and Jeremiah and Michael Dawson are all here to help out.
And don't forget, there's other kinds of work that are important too. So if you're a little daunted by the idea of getting in encoding, there's lots of other things to do. So, and again, it takes a village.
Yeah, one of the more interesting ones actually is that we have a new working group called the Collaboration Working Group, where we're sort of figuring out what the best practices are for how to do the working groups and how to cooperate with each other, and then trying to build tools that help improve that even further. So that's a really cool place if you want to hack on some fun GitHub API tools to poke around with.
And we're still working out the umbrella thing, so there's lots of room to have conversations there too.
So I asked this already yesterday in private, but I think it's pretty interesting for the rest also, maybe to hear an answer from the whole board or steering committee. NPM, what's the plan? The plan for NPM?
Well, we need an umbrella first, right? Because it's another top-level project, so we got to figure that out first. And if I was NPM, I would want to see that be successful before I moved such a huge project.
Yeah, NPM in particular, given who Isaac is. He's told all of us that he would like NPM to have a home with the rest of Node, but he is taking a let me see how it goes attitude.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, one of the goals of the umbrella is to be a good home for NPM, to be the obvious choice for NPM to go into, right? And it's on us to make sure that it is successful and that we create a good umbrella.
Given that the advisory board is all based by corporate members, and you are supporting the whole development of Node financially in the first place, how do you? Well, right now, given the issue we had, the situation. So Node had some huge problems in the direction and so on. But right now, the way the foundation is set up, there is an advisory board that can literally do nothing, possibly, to the technical committee. The way I understand it.
Well, so the board of the foundation, right?
The board of the
the
foundation.
advisory board was like a separate thing under Joanne.
Yeah, the advisory
Yeah, okay.
board's gone
Sorry,
now.
sorry. The board of the foundation is a complete. It can do literally almost nothing,
Well,
and
so they do a lot to keep the foundation going. They don't
Yeah.
they don't do a lot to like be involved in the core, right? And technical core. Yeah.
well, core might diverge from what the interest of those corporate members have in Node, and I would like to know what's your opinion about this issue mainly, because it probably can diverge at some point, given it's fully community driven. For what's the opinion of the companies sponsoring at the higher levels?
So our goal is to build out a board that is representative of the community. You're right; it's not very representative right now, but we're at the very beginning of finding the money, getting it all together. If you look at the board, some of the companies involved have a product based on Node. Some of the companies are users, like Groupon and PayPal are users fundamentally, and I think IBM pretty much is too, right? And we're working to get more people who are building things interested in the board work. But the idea is to make the board more representative. So it's only, the problem that you're worried about is really only a problem at the beginning when we're the only ones in the room, but we don't plan to be by ourselves for very long. And Todd and I, our job kind of, and I don't mean for our companies, I mean for our vocation, is to help open source projects that are in trouble kind of get themselves righted and back in the right direction and for the best possible outcome for everybody. And that's literally our job. That's what our companies ask us to do. But in the event that you, as a community, headed in a direction that we literally couldn't support for some reason, we would just stop paying our dues, and somebody else would come in who agreed with that direction. That's how it works, right? So I don't think there's as much of a problem there as you're worrying about. When we say we don't have much to do, what we're trying to say is, unlike previous times in the Node world, we will not be trying to tell you how to build your software. Does that make sense?
And we'll be putting in dollars to promote the project, support the project, help you all out, help you with travel to events, make sure that people know about Node, as well as full-time people who are out in the communities working to just move it along, help make good, solid contributions and make Node better for everybody. So what we've learned over the years here is that, if we work together, we can build really great things that build large ecosystems, huge communities, all boats float together, and we've got something we can all be proud of, and that's our aim, honestly.
So that's the companies that have shown up. That's why they're in it.
Thank you very much. That was what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Hi. So a lot of the time with open source, people tend to either drop out because they don't have time, and time is normally related to money, and then people don't join in because they don't have time, and it's normally related to money. So what I was wondering is there a plan to use some of the money that you raise from individual supporters and companies to help pay for open source projects and the people that are making the open source projects, especially ones that we all rely on every day, that we use, that we take for granted?
Like Node?
Like Node.
So there are foundations that do that, and we have no plan at this time whether that's something we're going to do or not, but I'll tell you about one that does that, and they didn't start out doing it, but they're doing it right now, which is Drupal is trying to finish Drupal 8, and it's taking all the resources that we have, and the board members went out and started raising money, and it was to pay down the bugs, the blocking bugs, get focused engineering on the blocking bugs so that they could actually clear them so the release could come out. They kind of painted themselves into a corner, and we the board organized to try to help them out of that corner. I'm not saying we will ever do that. I'm saying I've seen that happen in open source projects, but it's a situational thing.
The Linux Foundation also has a history of doing this. We got in trouble with a few interesting security leaks and other things over the last year. Not to mention it. So, yeah, I know. Yeah. So as a result, they went around and they solicited us all to raise money and to go start supporting those single, guy just working his heart out, doing something, and make sure they're well supported, get other people in working with them, et cetera. So yeah, there's a history there, at least with the Linux Foundation doing it, and certainly it could be something possible in our future if we need to.
Yeah, but the other thing is, if we do this right, there'll be enough work for everybody because all the companies will be successful and they will patronize they'll lend, as they have been doing, engineers to the process of building Node and making it better and better. That's what a healthy open source ecosystem does.
Yeah, I mean, a year ago, we were all very worried about the lack of people on core, and one of the early things that people wanted to do with the foundation was to pay people. By the time that we got a foundation, we had actually grown the contributorship like a lot. And paying people full time, it does have, there can be some negative consequences in terms of encouraging people from the community to get involved when you start doing that. So it is a danger, and you don't really want to do it unless you absolutely have to. So the way that this would happen, right, is that somebody who's doing a lot of great work is going to lose their ability to do it full time. That would be a risk that would be conveyed to the board, and then we try to figure out some way to deal with it, right? Whether that was finding one of the board members to hire them or having...
It happens, right?
Yeah.
But another interesting thing that can happen in this, if we get into a situation like that, is he's right. It makes a kind of us and them thing happen in your engineering work, and it's harder and harder to break in as a person who isn't underwritten by anybody. But there are other ways to balance it out. We have a lot of experience between us in this, having, I've been doing this, I figured it out the other day, like 18 years
You're
now.
only like 21, I thought.
I know. So.
Also, like the Linux Foundation, they tend to employ people as well that are more project manager kind of people as well, right? Like that's one of the harder roles for the community to fill, is like just keeping up to date with all of the contributors that are doing stuff, right? Which is, I mean, like I'm paid by the foundation now to basically kind of do that, like just be out there in the community figuring out what is going on and trying to bring all the resources that we have to bear and do that coordination. So. Anybody else? I'm gonna move around. There we go. Yeah, in the back.
Hey, so I hope this never happens, but what happens if the community is unhappy with someone on the board?
Oh, that's a good question.
But we're also nice.
Yeah, we're also nice. Why we're also nice. I'll give you a real world example of that kind of thing. There's a company that handles DNS registry that pissed everybody off a few years ago. And the famous project that I was the CTO for decided that they didn't want to have anything to do with that company anymore, kind of on general principle. And made a big deal of the fact that they were pulling all of their registrations. And that company ended up, feeling really bad about that and kind of changing their tune a little bit. I don't think any of our intention here is to muzzle the community in its expression of how it feels about anybody. If it's an actual person that you're having trouble with, the good news for you is I think the terms are only a year long right now. So by the time you organize to get rid of anybody, they're probably gone anyway. But it happens in all human endeavor, in all intentional communities, that there are personality clashes. And open source has had its share of those as well. And there are ways to deal with that. When we get the board balanced a little bit better, so there's more community representation, that kind of information can bubble up through those representatives, and they'll have votes. And that's a really good way to deal with it, I think. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the bylaws in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that the board can remove another board member,
yes,
right?
We can.
Yeah. So you basically, the community would have to convey their disapproval to the board, and then the board
They may not be able to remove a company, but they can request a different representative. Yeah.
And yeah, if I were a company and I had somebody publicly on a board and the public was against them, I would very quickly remove that person.
Yeah, sometimes they're left in place a little longer than you want. But, but yeah, I hear you. Thank you for schlepping the mic, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. To me, I'm not familiar with the exact configuration of the board right now, but to me it seems that it's mostly companies being represented which are based in the United States. How are you going to deal with keeping the board and their entire community like international?
Those are that's a goal, right? And as the community grows and as we see clusters spread around the world, we're actively going to be seeking out people to come in and participate that are diverse. And the other boards that I work with, that's what we do, right? As it grows, you see the population centers grow, and with that, you're all set. You'll see board members come on and represent the other geographies, and your community wants that, right? And you guys will vote them in as a result of that, right?
Well, and you also see us start adopting practices that support a global view. So not always pulling our meetings at times that are convenient in the US and having our public or in-person meetings spread out around the world instead of just wherever it's easiest for us. Again, this is a factor of the kind of, we scrambled to get this together, and now we'll work through the process of making it fit the community.
All right. We thought it was important to be out here with you guys, because you're in Europe, and there's a large cluster of folks using Node in Europe, and we want to see that continue.
Actually, there's a Node Day today in Bangalore that I wanted to go to, but this is the bigger conference, and at this stage, the goal is to just meet as many people as possible.
It's usually the bigger conferences in the States. So let's hope you also pick
the
smaller ones every now and then.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm saying this is the biggest one after the board was created.
Also, so this is something that we're worried about on the technical side as well, and this came up in the collaborator summit that we just had, where people who are not in a U.S. time zone are very worried about things moving to be more U.S. centric. And so, in the current draft of the umbrella, one of the things that you do to actually graduate out of incubation is that you can't have more than 1/4 of your TC represented by one company, and you also need to represent at least 4 time zones, right? So you have some distribution around the world, and that you're not starting to adopt policies that are not in line with that.
Are there any planned changes in the licensing?
No.
No.
I think anybody else? I think we're good. Oh, one more.
Hello. I would like to know what the best place is to keep informed of what the foundation is doing and when they meet and what they decided, and where can we find that?
Yeah, so we actually just got up the new website, and the new website has a much improved foundation section. And so the foundation section sort of lays out who the members are and what the bylaws are, and it also has two sections. One is an announcement section, which is any announcements from the foundation. Another is an in the news section, which is any other article out in the world about the foundation. So.
And we started, with the advisory board, we started the pattern, which is common in open source, of running a public meeting with a small private meeting after. So the first 3/4 of any board meeting is public, and you should be able to find out how to join it, to listen in. And then we saved the last 15 minutes because there's certain things that by law we have to discuss. We do put out minutes of those discussions, so it's not secret what we're discussing, but we're required to discuss them as a board without an audience. So things like ratifying a new budget or hiring stuff, those kinds of things.
How well Michael did on his goals.
Yeah,
for the year.
right. So what you would see in the report out of that is, there was a review of Michael's performance, but we wouldn't publish what it was, right?
Also, I mean, one of the things the foundation does, it's like all of the legal and IP stuff, right? And for obvious reasons, you want to have a lot of those discussions in private. So.
Hi.
All right.
Yep, over here.
There you
are. I was wondering what you do, what the US Node Foundation, as a US non-profit, how does the wealth get distributed between kind of the parties, and where does the money go, and kind of tax, etc.? How does that all happen between everyone.
So are you asking about the mechanics of being a nonprofit in the States?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so in the United States, there's a nonprofit kind of company that you can start, which we have done. That means that we are not subject to the same taxes on money that we create, or I mean that we earn, if you will, because we are existing for public benefit. So in acknowledgement of the fact that this is for public benefit, they don't tax us like a company that's making a product. And we have to demonstrate our public benefit continually, which we do by publishing our minutes publicly and by not engaging in certain activities. So for instance, we do not lobby politically, that we're enjoined from lobbying politically. One of the advantages of having a nonprofit is any donation that's made to the nonprofit is for some value non-taxable. Or you can give the person who's made the donation a certificate which they can attach to their tax return that says that they've made a charitable donation in the U.S.
Where is C6 though? So they can't do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry. I was doing C3.
Yeah.
That's where I usually live. The difference between C3 and C6 is that C6 is a trade association by design, which means that the people involved in it are all people that are somehow involved in the trade related to Node, but the foundation itself is for public benefit.
And we're doing it for the benefit of the industry as opposed to just
for the benefit of the members, right?
Members,
like the membership defined by whatever the membership category is. So the people putting in money are members, and once we have individual membership, like all of you can actually also have be members. And
so then we're required by law to file a public tax return yearly, which is called a 990, and there's a certain information that has to be in there, including how much money we raised, salaries that we paid. There's a few other categories of things. How we spent the money sort of in big chunks has to be in there. Not our detailed budget, but the big chunks. And you don't want to see the detailed budget anyway. Chunks are fine. And you can see these already for things like Wikipedia has them, or for the Linux Foundation files one every year. And generally, right after they're accepted by the IRS, we go ahead and put them into a tool that makes it easy to find them, like GuideStar, so that anybody can see them.
Oh, and so how the money gets distributed is that the way that auditing works for tax purposes is that every individual expense over $25 has to be traced back to the board approving it before it was spent. So you can't retroactively. So what the board does is they go, what is all of the money that we've raised, cut it up into buckets so that it can be spent on these specific things, and then nothing over that will ever be spent, which means that we actually never spend all of the money. But if you look at the budget in any given time, pretty much all of the money that we've raised is in some kind of bucket. And then if we need something else, we have to go back to the board, adjust the budget around so we know where that money's coming out of. Yeah.
We're in the Linux Foundation umbrella. The job of running the treasury and all of that stuff is handled for us by professional CPAs that work for the Linux Foundation. So sometimes when you get involved with these nonprofits for open source, the legality of the way things are done is a little questioned, but not so much with the Linux Foundation. That's part of why you pay them. So
I would be terrified to be doing this without that.
I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, I know.
Hi. Are conferences connected to the foundation, like the NodeConf, Node Day series, or they are something else?
Yeah, that's a little bit more complicated. So NodeConf is a community-driven conference. You can run one, and you should, and everybody should. And we've done a really good job of documenting that. Now, NodeConf specifically is part of like a collective where we're helping each other run events around the world. And it doesn't even have to be called NodeConf to do that. It's sort of just keeping the community conference thing going. At some point, that may become like a top-level project in the Foundation umbrella, but it would still be run by the community. The Foundation is running a conference called Node.js Interactive in Portland. And that is something that the Node.js Foundation is bootstrapping with money from the foundation. The Linux Foundation has a they're picking that up and going with it. And if it were to make any revenue, that revenue would come into the nonprofit and be part of our operating budget. So.
And that conference is meant to gather a user community. So this has a very developer-y feel. Although we are all users, it's a developer conference. And there's another kind of conference that's less fun and more marketery. You know, you've probably been to one in your life. It's meant to be more like that, so that people who feel comfortable in that environment can come. The truth is that those are expensive to put on, and you don't ever want to go there. This is a much nicer thing to do. There will be no whiskey tasting.
I'll be whiskey tasting in Portland, but you're welcome to join me personally.
He'll do a whiskey tour.
What?
That was it. He's buying. Yeah.
I think we're good. Yeah. We're like 10 over, I think, so we should probably do the workshops now. If you want to get into core, come to the workshop. Where is the core workshop, by the way?
Free of them go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clubhouse.
It's in the clubhouse.
And a happy workshop in the castle.
Okay, and happy workshops in the castle. And
Cool. Yeah, and I just want to, well, first of all, thank you very much. I think it's brilliant. But I kind of feel like saying it's great to have you over to the provinces or whatever outside the States. But yeah, no, it is really, really good that you came over, and it's great to hear. I think it's a very positive thing for the entire movement. So fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I dropped the short straw. I want to thank everybody for being very, very understanding with us. The main thing I'm here to do is to just say sorry. So we put on the conference, and we're developers, and we know that you wanted to blog and you wanted to tweet. There are several journalists who wanted to write articles, a host of other things. Some people couldn't watch Netflix, which is a real disaster. We got caught out. We're very embarrassed and we're very sorry. Okay, we know that a lot of you were inconvenienced. You come over here, you expect to be connected, and you should have been connected. And we just wanted to say we're very sorry, and we've worked tirelessly, and we'll continue to work tirelessly to see if we can get as many of you as connected as possible. But thank you for your patience, and thanks for